Hi everyone, in this lecture we are going to talk about the min-max function. Now our HTML is the same, so far our CSS is also the same. Now what is the min-max function? The min-max function allows us to specify a minimum and a maximum size for our either column tracks or row tracks. So you have a minimum size, that's why it's called min, and then a maximum like max function. So you need to have a function to define these 2 points. Now we could use the min-max function, the min content and the max content for grid template rows and for grid template columns. Again, min-max function is also a property value. It's not a property. Now there is something that I need to talk about. I think I've already talked about this, but it is worth mentioning that we know that we could use min-max function for rows and for columns. But when it comes to rows, what we want to do is we want to avoid specifying a fixed height for our container, for our row tracks, because we want the content to actually define the height of our rows. If you provide a fixed height when you make this screen smaller, it's not going to look good, and you're going to end up with a lot of media queries, a lot of fixed units, and it is going to take away the responsiveness of the website. It's going to make it that much harder, right? So when it comes to columns, we want to have more control over columns, less control as possible over rows, but still we want to know how many rows our website is going to have. And I'm going to show you how we can do that when we get to our projects. It's not very far. It's like a few more lectures. And then basically we are going to jump into our very first cool project. And I'm going to teach you how you can create a website from the ground up. What is the required setup for that website? How you can specify custom properties, how you can use custom properties, and all that cool stuff. So without further ado, let's dive into code. I'm going to say grid template columns. So I want to have 3 columns with the width of 1 FR. And then the 4th column is going to be a min-max function. So when it is a min-max function, we have in our definition, we said it provides a minimum value and a maximum value for a column. So it accepts or it expects 2 values. I'm going to say 150, and for the maximum, I'm going to say 300. Now in this case, when you just provide the comma, the width of the column is never going to go below 150, and its width is never going to go above 300 pixels. Let's save that. Let's come in here. Now here is the column that we have talked about. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the responsive tab. And when I'm in the responsive tab, I'm going to grab the width of this column, the width of this item. Let's go to compute it. Let's go. It's not specifically specified, so we need to say browser styles, and we should be able to find it in here. So here is the width of the column. It says 158. Now if I go ahead and if I keep making the window smaller, the width is going to get smaller, but it should never go below 150. And there we go. Now 158 is actually the width required for the content. Keep in mind that it doesn't matter what technology of CSS you use, what technique you use, whether that's Flexbox, that's grids, it's specifically CSS. Always the width of the box is going to be the width of the content within that box. The content comes from HTML. The box is represented by CSS. Keep that in mind. So what I could do here is I could set it to 200, and I could set this one to 400 so we could really see what is happening here. So I'm going to say go above that much. So the rest of the values, they're FRs. That's why it doesn't really show what it is that I want to actually show you, because it doesn't matter how much I stretch the window horizontally, the FR is going to cover that. So let me put it to 150 pixels so we know what it is that we are actually talking about. Okay, let me save this. There we go. So let's just make this bigger. It is still 1FR. Okay, Let's open it with live server. There we go. There we go. This is the website. I think that was the other lecture. Oh, still open. So now we know that the final width that the final column is going to accept is 158. And but the min-max function says the width should not go below 200. 158 is clearly below 200. There we go. So the maximum size the content is going to, the width of the column is going to accept is going to be 400 pixels. But what about the min size? So let's make this smaller. There we go. You can see this 335, and we're going to make it smaller and smaller, but it is never going to go less than 200 pixels. And now it says overflow. There we go. Basically, the content of the page, it overflows to the right. That's why the overflow icon in here and in here, they have been activated. Just to basically show you where the overflow is actually happening. There we go. So it's never going to go below 200, and it's never going to go above 400. Let's go through another example. And in this one, what I want to do is I want to create 4 columns, 3 of which are going to have 1FR values. So I'm going to say repeat 3 1FR. But the 4th column is going to be a min-max function. Now the min-max function is going to basically specify that the minimum size is going to be 200, but the maximum size could be as much as the container could provide, and that is 1FR. So in this case, if you're actually thinking about, okay, how many parts our entire container has been divided into, so we can understand what FR is going to be. Now, keep in mind, if your container is divided into 4 different FRs or fractions, 1FR is going to be 25% of that. But if your container is divided into 10 fractions, then 1FR is going to be only 10% of that. So you need to keep this in mind. 1FR, 1 fraction of the available space. How much available space do you have? Then you can calculate how much 1FR is going to actually take up. Now in this case, we have 3 FRs here, 1 FR here, that is 4. And then we say we have another 200 pixels on top of that. So it doesn't matter how much I enlarge this window, it's always going to take up 1 FR. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at that. But if I make it smaller, it should never go less than, you can see that it says 211. It's never going to go less than 200 pixels. And then you're basically going to end up with an overflow. So I'm sure you have understood a min-max function. The min-max function allows us to create dynamic columns. And by dynamic columns, what I mean is that with min-max functions, you can create responsive layouts, and within those layouts, you won't have to use even 1 line of media queries. So that's what min-max function is going to do. By the end of this HTML lecture, which is going to be 2 more lectures, and then the HTML series is done, and then we're going to jump into our first website. I'm going to show you in the next the lecture after the next lecture, the 88th lecture. This is 86th lecture. I'm going to show you how you can come up with very, very fluid columns for your websites. That's it for this lecture. See you in the next one.